Stories have always been human. This time, they are being written with something else. Each story you hear is conjured by artificial intelligence, carefully shaped and guided by human hands. Here's where you come in. The story isn't fixed. Your comments, whispers, and ideas can alter what's to come. You speak, and the story listens. This is no careless experiment. It's an intentional descent where man and machine work together to bring you fiction that feels all too real. So dim the lights, lock the doors, lean closer to the static. And remember, the words come from the machine, but the nightmares, they come from you. This is KillerPrompt. If you didn't hear the previous chapters, turn back. Start from the beginning before you buckle in. Thanks to all of you listening and stepping into the dark with us, KillerPrompt is now moving to weekly episodes. New episodes drop every Tuesday at 11 a.m. on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Now, let's get back on the road.
The rogue rider didn't move when Marla stepped into the clearing. He stood with his shoulders squared toward the trees, camera raised, the red light steady and patient. Whatever panic had driven him earlier had burned itself out, leaving something denser behind. Certainty. Evan's hand still burned where the plastic had bitten into him, the pain dull now. Background noise compared to the louder, uglier feeling crawling up his throat. His mind kept trying to normalize the scene out of habit. A man with a phone in the woods. A red recording light. A voice that sounded calm. His brain reached for explanations the way it reached for seatbelts. Automatic, desperate, useless. It's a prank. It's a blackmail thing. It's just some guy. But his body didn't believe any of it. His pulse hammered behind his eyes. His stomach floated. Every time the rogue rider shifted, Evan's attention snapped to the man's wrists. Too tight, too controlled, like he was hiding something just out of view. Evan couldn't see a weapon, but he felt the shape of one in the way the man held himself. The way his shoulders stayed squared, the way his elbow stayed close, like a secret he didn't want to drop. Run, his instincts screamed. You can't leave, Marla. You can't leave them, something answered back. I told you they'd come, he said calmly to Evan, without turning. Marla didn't answer right away. She studied him instead. The stance, the weight distribution, the way he kept himself angled, not defensive, but expectant. This wasn't a man improvising. This was someone who'd rehearsed the moment.
Drop the phone,
she said. He laughed under his breath. Reed stepped wider behind her, boots silent against the dirt, cutting off the path back toward the access road. The forest felt closer now, branches knitting together overhead, sound dampened by the weight of leaves and soil. The man finally turned. Moonlight caught his face fully, and Marla's expression changed. Not fear, not surprise, but recognition settling in slowly, reluctantly. Her jaw tightened.
No,
she said, then quieter.
It's you.
His mouth pulled into a thin, resentful smile. Took you long enough. Evan felt the shift immediately. This wasn't a stranger anymore. This was something unfinished, dragged back into the open.
You don't look the same,
Marla said.
That's why I didn't recognize you at first, Carl.
Carl's smile sharpened. Funny how much weight a person can put on when they've got nothing to do but wait. Reed's gaze snapped to Marla. You know him?
I know the file.
She said.
Not the version that went missing.
Carl lifted the camera slightly, angling it toward her face. Still calling it a file?
You were a writer.
Marla continued evenly.
You were flagged, vetted, offered a role.
Marla's voice stayed steady, but Evan caught the way her phrasing shifted into something practiced. Words clipped clean, like she was reciting from a template she'd said 100 times before. Flagged, vetted, offered. Corporate language, wearing a mask. Reed didn't look at Evan when he spoke next, but his tone had the same polished edge, like it belonged in a conference room instead of a forest. You breached time-on-scene limits. Multiple times. You triggered route integrity warnings. You refused corrective... Carl barked and laughed. Warnings! He rolled the word around like it tasted rotten. You mean when your little system started flashing because I wasn't sprinting back to my car the second it was done, when I wasn't following their rules to the exact letter? I do this because it's who I am. No one should be able to control my mind. Evan watched Marla's jaw tighten, not because Carl was wrong, but because he was saying it out loud. And I took it, Carl shot back. I did exactly what you people asked. It wasn't perfect, but I did what I was told. She didn't hesitate.
You turned into a psycho.
The word landed hard, flat, undeniable. Carl's jaw flexed. I turned into someone who stopped pretending this was clean. Marla raised the gun fully now, but she didn't fire.
You were taken off the books because you were reckless.
Carl laughed, shaking his head. No, I stopped following the script. Reed's voice cut in, tight but controlled. You ignored protocol. You lingered. You deviated from routes. You recorded. I documented, Carl snapped. There's a difference. Evan shifted where he knelt. He forced himself upright, steadying against the car. They cut you off because you scared them. Carl's eyes locked onto him. They cut me off because I scared you. Marla's grip tightened almost imperceptibly. You didn't like how close I got, Carl continued. I stayed too long. I asked questions. I noticed patterns. I stopped treating it like a job and started treating it like what it actually is. And what was that? Evan asked. Carl gestured around them. To the trees, the road, the quiet that swallowed sound. A hunger, and you feed it. Reed stepped forward, voice steady. You were becoming unstable. Carl laughed, a short, disbelieving sound. Unstable! He shook his head. I was becoming unstoppable. The words sat there, swollen with pride. I stopped rushing, Carl went on. I stopped vanishing after the job. I learned streets, houses, neighbors. I knew which doors stayed unlocked and which cameras were fake.
You ignored protocol,
Marla said. I outgrew it. His eyes burned now. Protocol is for people who need limits. I didn't. You were trying to do the job better, Evan said. You wanted to matter. Carl turned on him, smiling. I was the job. I solved problems before you even saw them. Reed's jaw tightened. You thought you were indispensable. I knew I was. Marla's voice dropped.
You weren't cut off because you failed.
Carl leaned forward. Then why?
Because you forgot what you were.
She said.
You weren't special. You were useful.
The smile cracked.
You started acting bigger than the system.
She continued.
Like it owed you.
Carl's hand tightened around the phone. I am bigger!
You were replaceable, and you couldn't stand that,
Marla said. The forest seemed to press closer. Carl exhaled sharply.
You really believe you're different?
Evan swallowed. She knows the system doesn't care. Something in Carl's face shifted. Rage, humiliation, panic. Then he moved. Reed lunged. Carl's arm flashed up, steel catching moonlight. The knife slashed wide and clipped Reed's shoulder, dark blooming fast through his sleeve. Reed grunted but stayed upright, crashing into Carl and driving him a step back. Marla, go! Now! He shouted. She was already moving. Marla hit the ground beside Evan, fingers fast and precise as she cut through the restraints. The plastic bit into her palm. Evan sucked in a breath as his hands came free, circulation screaming back into his hand now that the restraints were gone. Carl twisted hard, throwing Reed off balance. Derek hovered at the edge of the chaos for a half second, eyes darting too fast, breath too loud. His hands shook, not from fear, but from adrenaline hitting a body that wasn't built for violence. He could have backed away. Instead, he moved in, quiet, careful, like someone approaching a hot stove. He stayed low, tracking Carl's arms with the kind of concentration Evan had never seen in him at the gas station. His gaze flicked to Evan once, and for a heartbeat he mouthed something Evan barely caught. I got you. Derek barreled in without thinking, swinging the trauma kit like a brick. It caught Carl in the ribs with a wet sound. It wasn't brave in a heroic way. It was messy, human, instinctive, the kind of bravery that happened before your brain had time to talk you out of it. Sorry, Derek yelled. Instinct! Evan surged forward, adrenaline soaring, tackling Carl from the side. They hit the dirt hard. The knife skidded away into the brush. It didn't just skid, it vanished. 1 second it was there, silver, catching moonlight, and the next it was swallowed by leaf litter and shadow like the forest had decided it wanted a piece of this too. Evan's stomach lurched at the thought of it sitting somewhere unseen, waiting for a foot to find it the wrong way. Carl thrashed with ugly strength, desperation burning through whatever composure he'd worn a minute ago. Evan's knee slammed into something sharp under the dirt. Glass, maybe, or an old can. And pain flared white hot. He didn't have time to process it. He barely had time to breathe. Derek's weight hit Carl's legs, pinning them, but Derek's face was pale and wet with sweat, teeth clenched like he was holding back a scream. Reed staggered closer, one hand clamped into his shoulder. Blood ran between his fingers, dark and slick, soaking through the fabric in pulsing waves. Nothing about it felt clean. Nothing about it felt like a win. Carl fought viciously, wild now. No plan, no patience. That was his mistake. Evan held his arms. Derek sat on his legs, breathless but grinning. Marla was there a second later, knee in Carl's back, forearm across his throat. Reed staggered over, pressing a hand to his bleeding shoulder. He looked down at Carl, shaking his head. You planned for one person, Reed said. Maybe two. He met Carl's eyes. You didn't plan for loyalty. Carl's eyes flicked across them, not like a man counting enemies, but like someone counting variables. When he spoke, his voice was rough with strain, but the smugness tried to crawl back in. Loyalty? He scoffed, struggling against his captors. Reed's expression didn't change, but his posture stiffened. Carl smiled at that, small, satisfied. You think I'm the only one they cut loose? His gaze slid to Evan, hungry and sharp. You think I'm the only one who noticed what happens when someone quits? Evan felt cold creep up his spine. What are you talking about? Carl's smile widened like a wound reopening. The system don't like loose ends. Not ever. He leaned forward as far as Marla's hold allowed, eyes bright with something too eager. You're standing here acting like you stopped me. He swallowed, then whispered, almost lovingly. You don't even know what's still coming. Carl didn't say anything as they hauled him to his feet. Whatever arrogance had fueled him earlier had burned off completely, leaving only exhaustion and the dull shock of consequence. Evan noticed as Marla double-checked the zip ties and Reed walked Derek through the bandaging of his shoulder. Carl watched it all with hollow eyes. Carl was loaded into the back seat of Reed's SUV, seatbelt buckled, door locked. The camera, cracked now, useless, sat on the floor at his feet. Evan drove this time. No app, no instructions, just the familiar pull of the road and the knowledge of where they were going. The drive to the edge of the city was a quiet one, traffic humming close enough to hear, headlights sweeping past like nothing out of the ordinary. Quiet didn't mean calm. It meant all the sound had moved inside the car. Breathing, shifting fabric, the faint click of a turn signal Evan didn't remember turning on. Evan kept expecting another set of headlights to appear behind them and stay there, fixed, patient. Every time a car lingered too long in the rear view, his throat tightened. The radio hissed when he touched it, static that spiked into a thin, almost musical whine before dropping back into nothing. For half a second, buried beneath the noise, Evan thought he heard something familiar. A chime. Not music, not a station ID. That same clean, cheerful sound the app made when a ride began. He shut the radio off so hard the plastic creaked. Marla didn't react, but her eyes stayed on the windows like she was watching reflections instead of the road. Carl finally laughed. It came out hoarse. "The graveyard," he said. "Figures." Carl's eyes were searching for something. Pity, maybe. Validation. He found neither. "You know," Carl said, "I really would have gotten away with it." Derek snorted before he could stop himself. "Yeah, I mean, if it wouldn't have been for those meddling..."
Don't.
Marla snapped. Derek froze, hands lifted like he'd just tripped a wire. "Okay, yep, not finishing that thought." Reed leaned in slightly toward him as Evan got out of the driver's seat. His voice stayed low, meant for only Derek. "For what it's worth," he said, "I like you more than I expected." Derek blinked, then, flustered, pressed the bandages more firmly against Reed's shoulder. "I get that a lot," he muttered. They had parked between two crushed sedans, paint flaking, glass powdered into dirt. Carl finally laughed. It came out hoarse. "Drivers, graveyard," he said. "Figures." Evan opened the door and reached in, pulling Carl out so fast he stumbled and landed in the dirt and glass. Carl lay where he'd fallen, breathing hard, eyes darting between them like he was still searching for the version of this moment where he talked his way out. Evan stood a few feet away, heart hammering, glass crunching under his boot as he shifted his weight. Marla stepped past him. She drew the gun with the same calm she'd used 100 times before. Smooth, practiced, unremarkable. She didn't point it at Carl's head. She didn't need to. "Marla," Evan said, turning. "What are you doing?"
I'm finishing it.
She said. Carl froze. Evan stepped closer, instinct flaring. No, this isn't... She finally looked at him then, really looked at him. There was no anger in her expression, no thrill, just certainty.
You trusted me when you walked through the gate.
She said quietly.
You trusted me when you didn't know what any of this was.
She gestured faintly with the gun.
This part is mine.
Evan swallowed. You said I wasn't just a driver.
You're not,
She said.
which is why you don't have to carry this.
Carl laughed sharp and brittle. Listen to you, acting like this is mercy. Marla didn't respond. She simply motioned with the gun toward the far end of the yard. The car crusher sat there, half lit, hydraulic arms folded inward like something patient, waiting. The ground around it was a different kind of dirt, compacted, darkened, almost polished in places by repeated use. Concrete slabs sat beneath the crusher, stained in old rust blooms that looked too layered to be from cars alone. A faded paint line cut across the ground, half worn, half hidden, under grit. Beside the crusher was a small metal stand with a hook. Empty now, but shaped like something used to hang a clipboard or keys. A work light had been bolted to a post and angled with intention, throwing illumination in a narrow cone like a stage. Marla stepped into the exact spot where the spray wouldn't reach her, where the wind wouldn't carry debris toward her face. It wasn't luck. It was familiarity. Evan's stomach dropped as he realized she didn't need to think about where to stand. She already knew.
Walk.
She said. Carl hesitated, then stumbled forward, talking as he went, too fast, too loud, like volume might change the outcome. I did everything right, he said. I followed the routes. I took the risks. I was becoming unstoppable.
You were becoming unstable.
Marla said. Carl twisted back toward her. I was becoming important.
That's why they cut you off.
She replied.
You stopped following protocol because you wanted to be seen.
The machine roared to life. Metal screamed. Evan didn't move. When Marla returned, she was alone. Her jacket was unbuttoned, one sleeve smeared with grease and rust. She reached into her pocket and held something out to Evan. Carl's phone. Cracked, bent. One corner was visibly crushed.
He doesn't get to keep it.
She said.
In this life or whatever one is next.
Evan took it carefully. You okay? He asked. She exhaled.
Ask me tomorrow.
They left the yard without ceremony.
This ride has ended. Please remember to hit the bell to be notified of our next episode. If you enjoyed tonight's ride, bring a friend next time. Have them like, subscribe, and drop your username in the comments so we know who sent them. For a limited time, we'll send you a KillerPrompt sticker as a thank you for spreading the horror. Until next time, ride complete, tip added. We'll see you at the next chime of the app.